Hello, this is Miss Clark. Today I'm reading to you Standing Against the Wind by Tracy L. Jones. Patrice dreams of a first-class education, but right now she's just got to survive the walk to school. Chapter 1. Most days, Patrice Williams really didn't know which she liked least, walking home or actually getting there. Just 2 more blocks, she whispered to herself as she stood waiting for the light. During the bitterly cold days of winter, the 13-year-old had gotten into the habit of counting the blocks until she was safe at home. Safe from the freezing cold, wind, safe from the nasty comments made by girls who had cut school and were always hanging out in front of the local drugstore. Safe from the gang of boys who had all but quit school and who hung out in the broken-down playground in front of her building. They all seemed to have something mean to say about her. 1 more block. Patrice's quick steps slowed as she noticed the gang of boys from her middle school gathered at the foot of the stairs in front of her building. She had hoped that Chicago's frigid cold would have driven them inside. But even in this weather, they were assembled at the only unlocked entrance, attempting to make everyone else's life miserable. They were talking and laughing, looking like teen dragons, as the puffs of warm air from their mouths mixed with clouds of cigarette smoke they blew nonchalantly. Those not smoking blew on their hands and rocked back and forth on their feet, trying to keep warm and look cool at the same time. The January wind blew directly into Patrice's face. It seemed to reach right through her coat's thin fabric, and under her hand-me-down sweatshirt, and pinch her arms with icy, sharp fingers. With straps of her old backpack long since broken, Patrice's hand felt frozen in a tight fist around its tattered handle. She shivered again, this time more from nervous anticipation than cold. Trying not to look at the gang of boys, she stopped at the corner to switch the backpack to the other hand. For a brief moment, she wished she had not given her new Christmas gloves to her little cousin. Her old gloves so worn that the tips of her fingers were poking through holes were no match against the weather. Clutching her backpack, she scrunched down deeper into her coat to protect her neck from the cold and crossed the street. She shivered again. No matter which direction she walked in, it seemed that the wind blew right in her face, as if to stop her from moving forward. Patrice was always cold. Her grandmother would have said it was because she was too thin. Not enough meat in her bones. Patrice's grandmother used to try and fatten her up with an endless parade of after-school cakes, cookies, and pies. "Some chocolate cake for my Cocoa grandbaby," Grandma would say, as she slid an oversized plate of sweets in front of her. And maybe if she had stayed with her paternal grandmother, Patrice wouldn't be a walking stick. But since her mother had spirited her away from her grandmother a little over a year before, her small frame looked as if it hadn't gained 1 ounce. There was nothing big about Patrice except her large, doe-like brown eyes and her famous mop of hair. The only reason Patrice was noticed at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School and her new neighborhood was her abundant hair. So aggressive was it that it almost seemed alive. With effort, it could be coaxed into thick braids and ponytails, or even reluctantly convinced to lie in thick, shiny waves that tickled her shoulders. But since there was no one, including Patrice herself, with the time or motivation, to coerce her hair into a style, it was usually a big poof that threatened to swallow her head whole. One of her eighth grade classmates told Patrice that her hair had all the personality, leaving none for the shy, studious girl who lived underneath it. As she got closer to the building, Patrice quickly surveyed the group, looking for the only semi friendly face she could hope to find. She breathed a tiny sigh of relief when she saw Monty Freeman. Well, Monty wasn't her friend. She knew he wouldn't let the other boys harass her too much. She didn't know what made him cut off their teasing. He never even talked to her, but she was definitely grateful for his sympathy. Of the 5 or 6 boys, there were only 3 who ever caught her attention. Monty she liked because of the pity he took on her. Eddie Brooks and Rasheed Walters she despised. They seemed to take pleasure in making her miserable. Throwing her shoulders back and pretending to be braver than she felt, Patrice picked up her pace and marched toward the steps. She flashed a brief, shy smile at Monty, who returned her acknowledgment with the tiniest, quickest, and of course, coolest lift of his chin. The other boys smirked at one another and sauntered to the center of the steps, creating a barrier, blocking her access to the door. "Hey, Puffy!" sneered Eddie. "When you gonna get that hair of yours done?" Monty shot a quick, neutral glance at Eddie. The other boys snickered, and Patrice's shoulders dropped a bit. "Yeah, Puffy," added Rasheed. "Them naps on your head are bad. Ain't your sister still working over at the cutting style? You need to ask for a family discount." "Shoot, if her sister's still at cutting style, I'll go there myself. She is too fine," hooted Eddie. "Your sister looks good, Puffy. You sure you got the same mama?" Patrice threw an angry glare in Eddie's direction and tried to weave her way through the hooting and howling boys without much success. She didn't know what it was about her that they hated so much, but from the moment she arrived to live with her aunt, they seemed to relish teasing her to tears. "Ugh, let her alone, fellas," muttered Monty. "As nappy as y'all's head look, you shouldn't be talking. Let her in." Heeding the leader's command, the gang of boys cleared a path. Patrice hurried up the stairs and yanked open the door to the building. As it closed slowly behind her, she heard Eddie shout one last nasty comment. "Maybe when your mama get out of jail, she'll comb that head." Patrice jabbed the elevator button over and over again until, through the tears in her eyes, she noticed that the out of order sign taped to the door. With a little whimper, she pulled the stairwell door open and started up the 15 flights to her auntie's apartment. At least she would get a chance to stop the tears. Although the stairwell wasn't exactly what you would call warm, it was better than outside, and the hike up the stairs began to thaw her out. Excuse me. Stopping at the 10th floor, Patrice sat down and tried to compose herself. She knew her Auntie May would be upset if she came home crying again. Last week, she had overheard her aunt talking about her on the phone, and it had scared her. "Yeah, girl, Patrice is a good kid, but she's so tender-hearted, soft, you know," Auntie May had said between puffs on her cigarette. "She's smart, as a whip in school, but she ain't got no street sense. It's hard to believe she's Nana's daughter. Nana always had some angle. Nana's street, through and through. Shoot, that's why her fast behind is locked up. But Patrice, she ain't like no kid of mine, or them other kids of Nana's. Growing up down south with her daddy's mama made her too soft. I don't know if she can make it here or not. Always coming home crying about what them ghetto children be saying to her. Oh, when she first got here, they teased her about her accent, and then once she somehow got rid of most of that, it was her hair. Oh, Patrice knew her auntie was right. When she had arrived, all the kids laughed and mimicked her soft Georgia drawl. Before long, she stopped talking to most people, and when she did talk, she tried hard to suppress her accent. She was a shy girl anyway, and the teasing had made her feel worse. Now, even though much of her accent had disappeared, except when she was angry, Patrice was still quiet as a church mouse and twice as shy. Between puffs on her Newports, her auntie had continued, Patrice has gotten so quiet. She don't even say nothing back. Just stands there all hurt. I worry to death about that girl. She may not be able to live here too long. Girl, she can't take it. She ain't got no fight in her. She didn't have much when she got here. Now there ain't no spunk or fire in her at all. This place gonna eat her up. She do help round the house lot, though. I'll give her that, especially since I had to take that extra job on. I get home and can put my feet up 'cause she done most my chores. I tell you what, though, my sister was right to take that child to her daddy's mama when she was a baby. Miss Shanice Renee Brown did Patrice a disservice by bringing her up here. She's a sweet girl. Oh, I hope she can stay that way. Patrice shook the memory out of her head and stood up. Auntie May was the only one of her mother's 5 brothers and sisters who'd agree to take her in, along with her older sister, after her mom got sent to Mount Rose Women's Correctional Center. Her 15-year-old half-brother, Marcus, had been sentenced to a few years at a juvenile boot camp for trying to rob the local grocery store with a BB gun. So he had a place to stay, at least for the next 3 years. Patrice and her then 17-year-old half-sister, Charisse, had almost become wards of the state. So the last thing Patrice wanted to do was make her auntie worry. She might say Patrice was too much trouble to take care of. Auntie May worked 2 jobs and was always so tired. Patrice felt like a burden, and she went out of her way to help. She used her still unthawed hands to wipe any trace of tears from her face. Gathering her stuff, she finished hiking the rest of the way to apartment 1525. Even before opening the door, she could hear the yells coming from inside the apartment. It's my turn to pick the show, shouted Nefertiti, Auntie May's 7-year-old daughter. It is not, retorted Mark Anthony, her 9-year-old brother. You were watching that stupid rabbit show when I got home. Hey guys, Patrice greeted them. What's the problem now? Mark Anthony won't let me watch my share of TV, whined Nefertiti. He got to watch 2 shows yesterday. I should get to watch 2 shows today. Yesterday's all done. Today's a new day, Mark Anthony boomed, a deep voice, imitating the preacher at their church. Is your homework finished? What about your chores? Asked Patrice, moving the day-old newspapers, half-empty glasses, and overfull ashtrays off the wobbly dining room table and pulling out her schoolwork. Yeah, replied Mark Anthony. It's right there. Mom helped me today. With one hand, he gestured to a pile of paper hanging over the edge of the table, and with the other, he fended off his little sister. Some cigarette ashes had spilled onto his homework, and he had put a half-empty glass of milk on it as well, leaving a damp circle over problem 6 and 7. His other schoolwork lay on the floor, scattered under the table. But despite the mess, the homework was indeed finished. Patrice sighed. Mark Anthony, how many times do I have to tell you to put your homework in your backpack when you're done? Where's Annie Mae? Didn't she walk you home today? Yeah, she just went to the store to get some more cigarettes. Plus, she got to send money order to your mama. Patrice frowned. Mama ought to be sending money to Auntie Mae, not the other way around. Auntie Mae had enough trouble making ends meet since they cut her hours at the factory. Why you frownin', Puffy? Asked Nefertiti. What you mad at? I'm not mad at anything, snapped Patrice. And stop calling me Puffy. My name is Patrice. I know, but everybody at your school calls you Puffy, and them boys downstairs call you Puffy, and your hair is all puffy. Nefertiti rattled off. Yeah, so what? Patrice spat. If everyone jumped out the window, would you be dumb enough to jump too? I'm sorry. Nefertiti sniffed, apparently contrite. Don't be mad. I won't ever call you that again. Okay? Nefertiti wrapped her skinny arms around Patrice. Okay, Patrice said, freeing herself from the too tight hug. I'm sorry I snapped at you. I just don't like being called that. Then why you let them do it? Asked Nefertiti, putting her little hands on her hips. I wouldn't let no one call me some stupid name if I didn't like it. Patrice looked down at her shoes, unwilling to meet her cousin's defiant eyes, and shrugged. Just don't you call me that, okay? She muttered. Mark Anthony, who had been crawling around the floor gathering his homework during this exchange, stood up and looked at Patrice closely. Well, your hair is puffy, but the rest of you is skinny, he observed wisely. But since you helped me with my homework and stuff, I won't call you puffy neither. And I'll knock anybody in the head who does, as long as they're not bigger than me. Patrice smiled, embarrassed that her young cousins had much more nerve than she did. That won't be necessary, but thank you for the offer, Mark Anthony. After getting the TV feud settled and cleaning off the dining room table, Patrice sat down and worked diligently on her homework. Unlike the other kids in 8th grade, she liked homework. Since she didn't have any friends, it didn't cut her into her social life, and it gave her something to do besides her chores and taking care of Mark Anthony and Nefertiti. She also liked knowing that she had the best grades in class. No matter what the other kids said or what names they called her, they couldn't take that away. "Aw, man," whined Mark Anthony, looking around the living room for the remote he had hidden from Nefertiti. "What's the matter now?" asked Patrice, leaning back in her chair to see if the cable had gone out again. My show ain't gonna be on. Some news stuff is on instead." Patrice shrugged and turned to finish what was left of her homework when she heard the announcer say something that interested her. Scholarships are available for outstanding African American students. Dogwood Academy is one of the 5 predominantly African American boarding schools in the nation. For more, Mark Anthony had dug the remote control out of the sofa and clicked off the TV. Wait! Shouted Patrice. What? Mark Anthony said. That show, turn it back on. And they will send you information about this unique academic opportunity for promising African American scholars aged 13 to 15. Darn it, shouted Patrice. What show was that? Mark Anthony shrugged. I don't know. Wasn't Dragon Ball Z, though. Patrice didn't know why, but what little she had heard sent sparks shooting through her body. Staring at the blank television, she made a mental note to be sure to get home quicker tomorrow and watch whichever channel it was until she heard that information again. What she had heard sounded to her just like hope. As Patrice was finishing the last of her homework, Auntie May came home, puffing and wheezing from her cold walk to the store and her hike up the stairs with the 3 grocery bags. Her hacking and coughing made her worse by her 2-pack-a-day habit. Patrice had already started dinner and stood at the stove, stirring tuna helper with one hand and holding her assigned reading book with the other. Auntie May, did you remember to? Started Patrice. Auntie May interrupted her. Patrice, I saw that boy Monty in the stairway. He asked me to tell you to stop by his apartment after dinner. Apartment 1010. Patrice stared at her aunt. Stunned, she stopped stirring. Monty said what? She asked incredulously. Auntie May appeared, half amused at the open-mouthed, wide-eyed, unbelieving look on her niece's face, and half annoyed at having to repeat herself. The boy said that he wants you to come by his apartment after dinner, apartment 1010. Why? Asked Patrice, mostly to herself. Lord, I don't know, Auntie May huffed, taking the spoon from Patrice's hand and stirring the tuna mush. Anyway, I told him you'd be there about 7:30. 7:30? Patrice repeated. His apartment? Girl, what is your problem? 7:30. His apartment. He probably got to watch them bad kids till his mama got home. Said he would have called you, but the phone got cut off. His mama sure enough is a mess. He would have called me? Patrice muttered. Lord Jesus, the boy said he would have, but the phone is cut off. Have mercy. He cute now, but ain't nobody that cute, said Auntie May. This stuff is done. Call them kids for dinner. Patrice barely heard the chatter that was batted back and forth across the tuner helper. She hardly ate anyway, but tonight, in a stupor, she ate less than usual and sat there half dreading, half anticipating the end of the meal. You got your homework done? Asked Auntie May as Patrice finished clearing the dishes from the dining room table. Yes, ma'am, answered Patrice. Excuse me, Auntie May. Walking down the dim hall to the bathroom, Patrice started feeling a little queasy. She flipped on the light and stared at her image in the mirror. She wasn't too happy about the face that peered back at her. She had expected. Her hair was, well, puffy. Long overdue for a retouch. There was so much new growth at her scalp that she seemed to have a 2-inch afro connected to the still stiff ends of her hair. She snatched up a brush, massaged hair oil, and began brushing her hair. After 20 minutes of work, far longer than she ever took with her hair, she managed to create a halfway decent ponytail, one that lay as smoothly against her scalp as her insolent waves would allow. Patrice pondered whether she should change her clothes. Or not, as she washed her face and brushed her teeth. Deciding against it, she took one final glance in the mirror and shrugged. Well, this is as good as it gets, I guess, she said to herself, slamming the brush down. Auntie May, I'll be back soon to finish the dishes, she called over her shoulder. Knocking on 1010. Patrice panicked when she heard a jumble of voices inside the apartment. What if all Monty's friends were in there? The last thing she wanted was to deal with them and their smart comments. What could Monty want anyway? Why had she bothered to come? What had she been thinking? Patrice turned to flee back down the hall to the staircase when the door suddenly swung open. Hey, you, Monty said casually. Patrice spun back around and stared at him. My auntie, she said that you said that you wanted me to come by. Yeah, come in. Monty opened the door fully to reveal the messiest apartment Patrice had ever seen. Empty fast food bags were scattered on every surface. Toys covered the floor. Walking past the kitchen, Patrice saw from the corner of her eye dirty plates lying on the counters and stacked in the sink. The room smelled overwhelmingly like a mix of stale cigarette smoke and old fried food. Much to Patrice's relief, the voices she'd heard were those of three young boys. At the moment, they were hollering at a wrestling match on the big screen TV, which stood guard over the trash in the living room. Dang, shut up or I'll turn the TV off, threatened Monty quietly. Miraculously, the boys heard his low voice over the noise, and immediately the yelling quieted to a dull roar of squeaks and exclamations. Um, yeah, I need a favor, Monty said, leading Patrice to the back of the apartment toward the bedroom area. Patrice searched her mind for what this favor could be. She had heard rumors that he sometimes delivered drugs for one of the gangs, although for some reason she didn't really believe that he would do that. She was so deep in thought that she bumped into Monty when he stopped in front of a door in the hallway. As Monty opened a bedroom door, Patrice's heart began to race. She had no idea what favor she could possibly do for Monty, but she was certainly not willing to do anything that involved a bedroom. She was stunned by the number of classmates here in Chicago who were already pregnant at 13 or 14. It was just one of the many reasons that Patrice knew she would never fit in here. Apparently seeing her hesitation, Monty looked at her. Oh, come on, it's nothing like that, he said softly, his mouth halfway between a smirk and a smile. Trusting him for reasons she didn't know, Patrice reluctantly followed him into the bedroom. In stark contrast to the rest of the apartment, the small bedroom was amazingly clean. Against one wall, with Monty's jacket thrown carelessly across the lower bed, was a neatly made bunk bed. Against another wall, under a window, was a poorly painted pink crib, where a 1-year-old girl slept peacefully, thumb in mouth. Against the third wall, crammed to the closet door, was a desk, currently occupied by a boy who looked 7 or 8. You're smart, right? Asked Monty, looking straight in Patrice's eyes. You get good grades and stuff? The questions took Patrice by surprise. Yeah, I guess. What do you mean, you guess? What kind of grades do you get? What did you get on your last report card? Snapped Monty, seeming annoyed at her spineless answer. Patrice felt her face get warm, and she muttered, All A's. All A's? Exclaimed Monty, sounding both surprised and impressed. Dang, I was right about you. You smart, all right. Good. Michael here needs help with his schoolwork. My grades, they pretty much stink. He needs to be helped by someone who does the school thing right. Michael, who had been quietly watching them talk, looked embarrassed at the mention of his name. Patrice glanced from Michael to Monty and felt relief flood through her body. Schoolwork was about the only thing she felt comfortable doing, and it was the one thing at which she was very good. Sure. Is there a problem he doesn't understand or something? She asked, smiling at Michael, who seemed even more embarrassed at her question. Monty looked down at Michael and put his hand on Patrice's back. He gently guided her out into the hallway, closing the door behind him. The warmth of Monty's hand made her shiver. She took a step away and turned to face him. See, Michael is like way behind at school and he's been shuffled around a lot. And I think he missed a ton of school. He's been with our daddy for all his life. And so there's no telling where he's been or if he even went to the preschool or anything like that. He's in first grade, but he don't really know his letters good yet. And he's even worse with numbers and stuff. So I was thinking that you could like tutor him after school until he gets caught up. I think he'll listen to someone like you. I mean, you're smart and everything. He needs someone gentle like to help him. I ain't really got the patience to teach him right. I tried to tell my moms about him, but anyway, can you help him? Monty looked intently into Patrice's eyes. She didn't know why, but she really wanted him to be pleased with her. Sure, no problem. I help my cousins a lot. Tomorrow would be good. Do you think you could come up to my auntie's apartment after school so I can help them all at the same time? Monty's face seemed to brighten, and Patrice realized that he had thought she would refuse him this small favor. How could she have said no after all the times he had protected her? Yeah, that's cool. We'll be up tomorrow. He gave her a smile, which made her stomach flutter. And they started for the front door. Great. Patrice paused. She really wanted to thank him for sticking up for her. Monty? Monty opened the front door and slouched casually against the door frame. Yeah? I, began Patrice. She looked down at her feet and nervously ran her hand across her hair. I'll be ready at about 4:30, so send him up then. As usual, she had chickened out. All right, tomorrow at 4:30. Cool, Monty said. Yeah, okay, good. See ya. Later. Patrice stepped out into the hallway, feeling strangely happy. Half skipping, half walking, she pranced down the hall to the stairs. With a last glance back, she saw that Monty was watching her with a smile. No, maybe it was a smirk on his face. Embarrassed, she gave him a little wave, then turned and walked with much more dignity to the stairwell. So that is all of chapter 1. We will stop there, and there will be some comprehension questions in the Google Classroom. Please answer those. Thank you.